I grew up in a narrow red brick house on Willow Street in Chicago, Illinois. It was 2 stories high, with creaky wooden floors, ivy that climbed unevenly up the front, and a porch that leaned slightly to the left. My mother, Diane, said the tilt gave it character. My father, Robert, said it was just expensive to fix. I used to think that the house could hear us. It held its breath whenever my mother and sister entered a room together, as if it already knew I would disappear in their reflection. My sister, Ava, was the kind of person who was noticed before she spoke. She had the kind of face that made people pause, and she knew it. Every family picture on our hallway wall was arranged around her. She always stood in the middle, her chin lifted, her smile bright. I was usually somewhere on the edge, my eyes half closed, the forgotten one the camera barely caught. From the start, my mother made it clear that Ava was special. When Ava danced, Diane recorded every moment. When I sang, she said my voice was sweet but untrained. Ava's trophies filled a glass cabinet in the living room. My art projects were stored in the attic under boxes labeled old stuff. Whenever I achieved something, good grades, awards, promotions, my mother would smile politely, then find a way to make Ava part of the story. Ava taught you discipline, she once said, even though my sister never lifted a finger to help me. The erasing began early. At 8, my name was left off a school play program. At 12, my birthday cake read, Happy 13th, Ava, even though it was mine. When I cried, my mother said, Don't make a scene. Ava didn't mean it. That was her favorite phrase. It excused everything. Ava didn't mean it when she took my clothes without asking. Ava didn't mean it when she humiliated me at school by sharing my private messages. Ava didn't mean it when she told people I was jealous of her. Apparently, I just misunderstood. After college, I stayed in Chicago, while Ava joined a luxury events firm downtown. She bragged about planning parties for millionaires and once told me, You're lucky I even mention you to my clients. I was working as a freelance copywriter, earning enough to pay my bills and save a little each month. Ava, however, used my name on her invoices when vendors complained. She said it sounded professional. When I confronted her, she rolled her eyes. You should thank me. People know your name now. I rented the attic apartment of our family home for $900 a month. I paid on time. I fixed the leaky ceiling myself with a bucket and an old towel because my mother said she was too busy to call anyone. The walls were thin enough to hear her laugh at Ava's jokes downstairs. Every time I heard the clinking of their wine glasses, I told myself I didn't care, but I did. One evening, Ava came up to my attic with her phone and said, I need you to co-sign a lease for my new office. When I told her no, she smiled sweetly. Don't be dramatic. It's just your signature. I said again that I wouldn't. She turned cold immediately. You're so selfish. Mom was right. You'll always be small-minded. That night, she told everyone I had turned on the family. My mother refused to speak to me for days. That was the pattern. Ava was the sun, and our mother tilted the world to make her shine brighter. I was asked to stand quietly in the shade and pretend to be grateful for the warmth that never reached me. If I dared to step forward, they said I was being ungrateful. But something inside me began to change. The first time I said no to Ava's manipulation, I felt an unfamiliar strength in my voice. It scared me and comforted me all at once. I started saving more, every freelance check, every extra shift. I took on late-night writing projects for a travel website, typing stories about cities I had never seen. I hid my pay stubs in a cookbook my mother never touched. The more I worked, the more invisible I became to them. When I bought a small secondhand car for $3,200, Ava told everyone Marcus, her boyfriend at the time, helped me pay for it. When I refused to correct her, she took the silence as surrender. She didn't understand that silence was no longer my weakness. It was my armor. One Sunday morning, I overheard my mother and Ava talking in the kitchen. Ava said, She'll never leave. She needs us too much. My mother laughed softly. She's too soft to survive without family. I remember standing at the top of the stairs, barefoot, holding my coffee mug, realizing that they truly believed that. They didn't just mistreat me, they underestimated me. That night, I opened my laptop and made a folder called Future. Inside, I placed copies of my savings account statement, my lease notice, and an application for a small apartment I had seen listed for rent on North Paulina Avenue. It wasn't much, just one bedroom with chipped walls and a window facing an alley, but it was mine. Every night after that, I fell asleep imagining my name on a mailbox that belonged only to me. I didn't dream of revenge or validation. I dreamed of silence, the kind that doesn't ache. When I told Ava I was moving out, she laughed like it was a joke. You? Alone? You can't even fix your own ceiling. I smiled and said, I already did. My mother called it a betrayal. She said, families don't leave each other. I said, they do when staying means disappearing. The night before I moved, I sat on the attic floor surrounded by boxes and old photographs. I found one of me and Ava as kids. She was grinning, her arms slung around my neck. I was half turned away, my smile uncertain. I slipped the photo into a drawer and left it there. Some things didn't need to come with me. When dawn came, I carried my suitcases down the narrow stairs of the Willow Street house. The floorboards creaked like they were whispering goodbye. My mother didn't wake up. Ava didn't wave. I loaded my boxes into the back seat of my car and drove away without looking in the rearview mirror. The sun was rising over the skyline, golden light spilling across the buildings. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a shadow. I didn't know what waited for me beyond that day, but I knew it would be mine. Every mistake, every victory, every inch of peace. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered, this is how you begin. I hadn't planned to stop at Rossi Jewelers that day. It was one of those humid Chicago Saturdays where the air feels like it's holding its breath. I'd been walking to the library with my tote bag full of drafts for a freelance project when I noticed the moonstone rings displayed in the window. They shimmered softly under the glass, pale and calm, like light trapped in water. I hesitated outside, watching the way they caught the sun, and thought maybe, just maybe, I deserved something beautiful for once. Inside, the store was quiet except for the faint hum of air conditioning and the clink of metal on glass. A clerk greeted me with the kind of smile reserved for window shoppers, not buyers. Just looking, he asked politely. I nodded. My voice always went small in places like that, the kind of small that made people talk over you. Then the bell above the door chimed again, and the air shifted. Ava walked in like she owned the place, heels clicking in a confident rhythm. She wasn't alone. Two of her bridesmaids followed, each carrying shopping bags and phones ready for photos. My sister had a way of turning every room into a stage. She spotted me instantly, her mouth curving into that familiar smirk that said I'd just become part of her performance. Well, look who discovered jewelry, she said, loud enough for the clerks to hear. She leaned in to kiss the air near my cheek. Trying to find something to match your thrift store wardrobe? Her friends laughed, echoing her cruelty. I felt the sting of humiliation before anything else, like being 10 again, standing in a living room where everyone pretended I wasn't invited. I'm just browsing, I managed, trying to keep my tone even. Ava plucked a ring from the case, one I'd been admiring. Oh, this? It's exactly what I picked for my collection launch. Don't tell me you're copying my taste now, too? Her words sliced clean through the air. The clerk looked uncomfortable, but no one said a thing. I reached for the ring, my hand trembling. Please give that back. Ava's smile didn't move, but her eyes hardened. You don't know how to wear something this fine. And then she slapped me. It wasn't a dramatic wind-up, not the kind that belongs in movies. It was fast and flat, the kind of slap meant to humiliate, not hurt. The sound echoed through the glass cases, sharp enough to make everyone stop breathing for a moment. I tasted copper on my lip and realized the room had gone completely still. A man at the far counter turned. His face was familiar, though I couldn't place why at first. He wore a tailored gray suit, simple but expensive, and his expression was unreadable. Later I'd remember his eyes more than his clothes, steady, focused, almost too calm. Did you just hit her? He asked. Ava blinked, caught off guard, then pasted on a sweet smile. Oh, It's just a family joke. My sister's sensitive. He didn't smile back. That didn't look like a joke. He turned to the manager. You have cameras here, don't you? Save the footage. Ava's face drained of color. Her friends exchanged uneasy glances. I stood frozen, hand pressed to my cheek, watching this stranger dismantle my sister's performance with simple, measured words. The man looked at me then, not with pity, but something quieter, recognition maybe. Are you all right? I nodded automatically, though I wasn't sure I was. He turned to the manager again. If she touches her again, call the police. I'll make sure it's handled. The clerk offered me a glass of water. I could barely hold it without shaking. 10 minutes later, my mother arrived, breathless and dramatic, as if she'd been summoned to a crime scene. Ava had clearly called her first. What did you do now? My mother demanded, looking straight at me. Why do you always make trouble? Before I could answer, the man, whose name I later learned was Marcus Hale, stepped forward. Ma'am, your daughter was assaulted. In public. You might want to ask the right questions. My mother blinked, unamused. You don't know her. She exaggerates. Marcus turned to me and spoke softly, as if the rest of the room no longer existed. Do you want to file a report? I didn't know how to answer. My whole life had been about avoiding scenes, avoiding being called dramatic. Now a stranger was offering me justice, and I didn't know what to do with it. He must have seen the hesitation because he nodded once and said, Then let me walk you out. No one should leave a place like this alone. Outside, the summer air hit my skin, warm and heavy. I felt like I could finally breathe, even though my chest still hurt. Do you have someone to call? He asked. I have myself, I said quietly. He smiled a little, as though the answer pleased him. That's carried me through a lot, too. He handed me a small card with his name and number embossed in silver. If you ever want help finding a new place, somewhere that's yours, call me. No strings attached. I can't afford a buyer's agent, I blurted, embarrassed by how quickly I assumed it was charity. He shook his head. My commission goes to my foundation. You'd pay nothing. Just think about it. That night, I sat in my attic room with a card on my lap, reading his name over and over. No one had ever offered me something without demanding proof that I deserved it. 2 months later, I did call him. He helped me find a one-bedroom apartment on North Paulina Avenue, a modest but sunlit space with tall windows and a small balcony where I could drink coffee in the mornings. The rent was $1,750 a month, and for the first time in my life, I signed a lease that had only my name on it. Marcus didn't step inside after I moved. Instead, he sent a housewarming plant and a note that read, Build something that is yours. We met for coffee once after that. He asked me what I wanted most if no one else got a say. I said, a room where I'm allowed to speak. He smiled and said, then buy a table and invite only those who listen. 3 months after that, he invited me to dinner. He cooked, which surprised me. Roasted chicken, rosemary potatoes, and music that sounded like warmth. When he reached for my hand, he asked permission first. By December, we were married at City Hall. I wore a simple silk dress that cost $380 and a moonstone ring that matched the one I'd admired in the window months earlier. Snow drifted outside like white punctuation marks to our new sentence. When we walked out, my phone buzzed nonstop. Ava had posted about me, trapping a rich man. My mother commented beneath it, a small red heart and the words, "Be careful who you trust." Marcus saw my face, took the phone, and slid it into his pocket. Let them shout into their own echo chamber, he said. We've got a home to make. And standing there in the falling snow, his hand around mine, I realized something. Maybe the slap hadn't broken me. Maybe it had named me. It had forced the world to finally see the woman they'd spent years erasing. The brownstone we bought in Lincoln Park wasn't perfect, but the moment I walked through the front door, I felt something I'd never felt before: ownership. It had scuffed floors, uneven railings, and a cracked kitchen tile that looked like a lightning bolt across the room, but I loved every flaw. The house cost $1.6 million, and Marcus negotiated the price down by $80,000 because the seller was relocating to London in a hurry. It was the first time I signed property papers without fear. Every page I initialed felt like reclaiming a piece of my voice. After we moved in, Marcus said, "Make a list of what would make you breathe easier." So I wrote, solid locks, a quiet office, a table that seats 8, a pantry that closes, a safe for documents, and a mailbox with my full name on it. He circled every line and said, "Done." The first thing I bought wasn't furniture or decor, it was a dining table. I found a walnut table on a neighborhood resale site for $1,200 from a woman moving to Boston. She threw in 6 chairs for free. I spent a Saturday afternoon polishing it by hand, watching the wood's grain catch the light. When I placed it in the center of our dining room, I left one chair empty. It wasn't for anyone specific. It was a promise to never let anyone sit there who didn't respect me. When we hosted our first dinner, I wrote name cards with a thick black pen. Seeing my name written clean and centered on white cardstock made something old inside me finally stand upright. For years, I'd sat at tables where my name wasn't on the invitation, or worse, where my seat was an afterthought. Now my table carried my name. For a few months, life was peaceful. My morning started with coffee on the small balcony, my laptop open, the city hum below. Marcus worked long hours but always came home with stories about the people he was helping through his development projects. I started writing essays about women who rebuild their lives quietly, without recognition. I never published them. They were just for me. Then one afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. When I answered, Ava's voice filled the line, sugary and sharp. "Heard about your little housewarming," she said. "Funny, I wasn't invited." "It was small," I replied. "Just close friends." "Well," she said, pausing for effect, "I'll be close enough soon." A week later, I looked out her front window and saw her standing on the sidewalk with a cameraman. She'd started a lifestyle vlog called Ava Inspires, and apparently, she'd chosen my home as her backdrop. "It's my sister's place," she called up to me when she saw me through the glass. "Let me in. It'll be great content. Family reunion vibes." I opened the window, but didn't smile.
"No."
She blinked as if the word didn't register. "Family is everything. Respect is the entry fee," I said and shut the window. She shouted something after that, but I didn't listen. I went back to stirring the pot of soup I had on the stove. The quiet inside the house was worth more than any apology she could fake. 2 weeks later, a friend sent me a link to Ava's social media post. Her jewelry brand had released a sisterhood collection featuring a gold bracelet supposedly designed by L, short for me. My name, my story, was being used again. I emailed the company, explained the truth, and within hours received a generic response saying they had relied on Ms. Ava's representation. Marcus's attorney, a woman named Claire Henson, handled it. 2 formal letters later, costing $650, the post disappeared. Ava called me that night, furious. "You're cruel," she said. "You made me look like a liar." "You did that yourself," I said and hung up. I printed the lawyer's receipt and placed it in the small safe Marcus installed in our bedroom wall for $400. I wanted a record of the moment I stopped being the family's silent scapegoat. A few weeks later, my mother called. Her tone was different, soft, almost pleading. "Can I bring lunch?" Just the 2 of us. When she arrived, she carried tuna sandwiches and a worn paper bag full of old photographs. She set the pictures on my table like an offering. "Do you miss how close you and Ava once were?" she asked. I looked at the photo. She slid toward me. Ava and I as teenagers, standing on the porch of the Willow Street house. She was in front, beaming. I was behind her, half hidden by her shoulder. "We were never close," I said. "I was useful." Her eyes narrowed. "You're rewriting history." "No," I said quietly. "I'm writing mine for the first time." She left half the sandwiches untouched and all the photographs behind. I kept one picture, the house on Willow Street, and placed it in a drawer. That was enough. By spring, Marcus and I launched a small donor fund. We named it the Quiet Start Initiative, aimed at helping women who needed to leave unsafe homes. We contributed $120,000 and asked a few of Marcus's colleagues to match what they could. Within weeks, donations reached nearly $300,000. One of the first grants went to a woman named Teresa, who used it to pay for a locksmith and a new door before sundown. Her thank you email ended with, "You gave me a night's sleep I thought I'd never have." I printed it and stuck it to our fridge with a lighthouse magnet. A few months later, an invitation arrived, addressed to my old apartment. My former neighbor, who still got my stray mail, walked it over. It was from Ava, an engagement party at Rossi Jewelers of all places. Marcus asked, "Do you want to go?" "I want to walk in and not look at the door," I said. He nodded. "Then we go." That night, I wore a simple black dress and the moonstone ring Marcus had given me. The store manager recognized me instantly and offered water with a polite nod. Ava's fiancé, a man named Carter, introduced himself with a smirk. "You look better than expected," he said, which I took as a compliment he didn't mean. My mother appeared, perfectly put together, and whispered, "Try not to embarrass us." Ava raised her champagne glass. "To loyalty and forgiveness," she said, locking eyes with me. "Even when people don't deserve it." Laughter rippled through the room. Then, with an angelic smile, she added, "And to my sister, who once tried to steal a ring from this very store." The room hesitated, unsure how to react. I didn't move. Marcus stepped forward, calm as ever, and asked the manager for the microphone. "I'm proud to be married to a woman who tells the truth even when it costs her a seat," he said. "And some of us remember exactly what happened here last year." He looked toward the security camera. "I'm sure the footage is still archived." The manager cleared his throat. "It is." A hush fell. Ava's smile cracked, her confidence folding in on itself. I thanked the manager for the water, left a donation card for their annual fundraiser, and walked out. The cool air outside felt like freedom brushing against my skin. I didn't need to prove anything anymore. Back home, that empty chair at my table stayed empty for a while longer, until June, when I invited a young woman named Leah from a local shelter. She was learning grant writing. We shared pasta with basil and laughter that felt unguarded. When she told me she dreamed of opening an emergency housing program that could activate in 12 hours, I wrote her a check for $25,000. She stared at it, speechless. "You have no idea what this will do," she whispered. "I do," I said softly. "That's why I'm doing it." And for the first time in my life, I felt full, not from food or praise, but from purpose. I had built a table that finally had my name on it. The idea for the foundation began one quiet morning in our kitchen. The city outside was still half asleep, soft light pouring through the window and settling on the marble counter. I sat at the island with a yellow legal pad, tapping a pen against my coffee mug. At the top of the page, I wrote "Quiet Light Foundation" and underlined it twice. The words looked simple, almost fragile, but they carried everything I had become. The mission was clear in my mind: to help women who, like me, had been silenced or erased, those who needed not a handout, but a door. I wanted to fund quick exits, emergency legal help, and the first 30 days of safety and dignity. I wanted them to have what I once needed: a place to breathe and start over. Marcus read the draft later that morning. He didn't edit a word. He just said, "Let's build it." Within 3 months, we had opened a fund with $2 million from his real estate portfolio and $150,000 from my own savings. Donations started pouring in, small ones mostly. $10 here, $50 there, sometimes $500 with handwritten notes. My favorite read: "I wish someone had offered me a door when I needed one." I hired Julia, my longtime friend from college, as operations director. I offered her a salary of $85,000 a year with full health coverage, including therapy sessions. She teared up when she read the offer letter. "You're doing something real, Elodie," she said. I smiled because, for the first time, I felt the same. We rented a small office on Diversey Avenue for $2,400 a month. The building was old, with uneven steps and peeling paint, but the view overlooked the park. We painted the interior walls soft white and hung no art. One wall I left blank, reserved for letters from women we helped. Within a month, it was already filling up. The first letter came from a teacher named Lorraine. She used a $600 emergency grant to change the locks on her apartment after her ex-husband tried to break in. "You didn't just buy new locks," she wrote. "You bought me one full night of sleep." I pinned her letter in the center of the wall and read it every morning before turning on my computer. It reminded me why silence could be power if used right. Ava found a way to turn even that into a headline. She posted a heavily edited clip from the jewelry store incident, claiming I had staged the whole thing for attention. Her caption read, "Beware of women who build empires from pity." Within hours, the store manager replied publicly from the official account, confirming the footage was real and that multiple witnesses had verified the event. The comments turned against her quickly. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Some truths echo better in quiet. But Ava wasn't done. A week later, she emailed me. "You think you're some kind of saint?" she wrote. "You're just a sad woman pretending to be reborn." I closed the message, deleted it, and went back to reviewing grant proposals. I'd spent years giving her my reactions. Now, I gave her silence. My mother visited on a Sunday. She stood in the foyer of the brownstone, taking in the neatness, the flowers on the table, the hum of something stable. "It's beautiful," she said softly. "Marcus treats you well." "He respects me," I corrected. She followed me into my home office. When she saw the wall of letters, her face softened. She touched one lightly, tracing the handwriting. "This is good," she murmured. "I didn't think you'd ever do something like this." Then her tone changed, the familiar tilt of guilt slipping back in. "Will you speak at the family reunion next month? People keep asking questions about you and Ava. I think it would help if you showed them you've moved on." I met her eyes. "My life isn't a product for your peace." She blinked, stunned by my calm. "You always wanted too much," she said finally. "I wanted the right amount for a person," I replied. When she left, she didn't take the sandwiches I'd packed for her. I stood by the door after it closed, forehead against the wood, not crying. Not this time. I didn't need tears to mark the end of something. Silence was enough. By August, the foundation funded its first major project, a 12-bed transition home on the west side of Chicago. We painted the front door a bright sky blue and planted rosemary and basil in long wooden planters beneath the windows. On opening day, the air smelled of paint, earth, and hope. A woman in a green dress approached me during the ribbon cutting. She took my hand and said, "I saw you speak once. The way you stood made me straighten my spine." I smiled. "I practiced for years." She laughed. "Me too." The ribbon we cut cost $9. When the scissors snipped through the thin red strip, the crowd cheered like it were gold. That night, back at the brownstone, I set our dining table for 8, though it was just Marcus and me. Habit had become ritual. I wrote my name on a place card, even though it was my house. Marcus poured sparkling water and raised his glass. "Do you feel different from the woman who had cash and a cookbook on Willow Street?" "I feel like a person with windows," I said. He smiled. "Then here's to windows." The last space inside me, the part that once waited for someone to erase me, began to soften. It didn't vanish. It reshaped itself into something steadier. Proof that I could be visible without permission. Proof that I could open a door without fear that someone would slam it behind me. Ava still posts about her brand. My mother still chooses her side. But they no longer decide how I exist. They can have an audience that claps for noise. I have a table with my name, a front door that opens clean, and a foundation that answers the phone before the second ring. Sometimes I walk past the mirror in the hall and catch my reflection unexpectedly. For years, I would flinch, unsure who I was seeing. Now, I nod to her like an old friend. I no longer ask for permission to be seen. If you pass our brownstone at night, you'll see a warm rectangle of light in the front window. Sometimes it's Marcus and me, laughing over pasta. Sometimes it's a small board meeting that runs too long. Sometimes it's a woman sitting at our table, reading a letter aloud, her voice shaking until it steadies. This isn't a revenge story. Revenge burns too quickly. This is about rebirth, the slow rebuilding of a self that once believed she had to earn her right to exist. I was once the shadow behind someone else's spotlight. Now I help women find their own light switch in rooms they thought were dark. And when the light comes on, it doesn't need applause. It only needs to be seen.